it's one of the things that really holds small business owners back from growing their businesses and being as successful in their business in really connecting with their ideal clients, is that kind of lack of confidence in their ability to communicate, to connect effectively with their intended audience.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Masters in Fitness Business Podcast, where you get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And today we're bringing you a giant from California by way of Boston, Massachusetts. He's a New Englander by birth and by choice. But now he's chosen to make his home in Southern California. Seth Donlin. He's the founder and principal strategist of I Win Coaching, a leadership and communications coaching practice specializing in helping service-based businesses and sport and fitness professionals build their authority, expand the reach of their message, and grow their business and income. Seth, welcome to the show. Did I get all of that right?
You did, Jim. Thanks very much. That was a great intro. I'm honored and and pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad. Thanks for taking the time to come on. And we were talking about, so tell us a little bit about what you do, kind of unpack a little bit. And then also I'm interested in what made you choose this path.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm gonna lose my glasses because it's real. I can see it's getting glare and it's bugging the heck out of me, though I may be the only one. So now your face is a little blurry to me.
Okay.
So how did I get started on this path? Well,
I probably look better to you now.
Yeah, we all look better when I take my glasses off.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So how did I get started on this path? Well, it's been, I guess my love of communications. I mean, heck, I guess my love of communications started when I was a kid. I was just, I was born with the gift of gab. And that's not to say that I'm a super, that I've ever been a super confident speaker. Since my teen years, I've suffered from anxiety and depression, but I'm just super extroverted. I'm very gregarious, and it was natural for me to go into a business where I was going to always be talking to people. And so in college, I was a creative writing major, and I was trying to figure out how the hell am I going to support myself with a degree like that. And that eventually led me into journalism, realizing that like long form kind of magazine style journalism is somewhat similar to, creative writing. And you're not making it up, but you're telling a story. And I was lucky enough to partner up with some other interesting and driven young folks when I was in my early 20s. And we launched a newspaper, which became very successful. It became the largest weekly newspaper in Boston. Eventually sold that. And then I had been mainly writing about politics and social issues. And I got an offer to be the chief of staff of a local, a fairly prominent local politician, and that got me into a career of kind of advertising and marketing and stuff like that, because one of the things that I did is one of my main roles as his chief of staff was really, marketing him, right? Keeping him in the public eye and booking him on things and dealing with reporters and so on and so forth. So anyway, after probably, I don't know, close to 20 years of doing stuff like that for various politicians and city governments and in the private sector, contracting for the federal government and the state government and stuff like that, I eventually went into practice for myself, working with small businesses. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My family owned a number of businesses, and I guess it was a natural pivot back to, I had been a business owner before. I did that for a number of years. I still do. I have a second business, which is called Owen AF, which is a marketing consulting firm. But more and more, I realized I really liked working with people more one-on-one, working on them rather than strictly on their business, not working on them, but working with them on helping, teaching them to fish rather than giving them the fish, and that led me into this coaching business, and really my skill set is in marketing and communication. So that was the logical move. I've been a lifelong fitness, I don't know, fanatic, but maybe close to it. I run obstacle course races, compete in triathlons, have been a martial artist since I was 8 years old. And so that's a group of people that I'm very comfortable with and knowledgeable about. And so that was a kind of a reason why I focus my practice, not entirely, but largely on folks in the sport and fitness and, martial arts and field.
Okay, awesome. That's great. So since you've been working with the people like small businesses in the fitness arena, fitness industry, what are some of the glaring things that you see that they need help with that you can help them with?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, not surprisingly, the glaring weaknesses that I see are in people's communication, in which, essentially leads to marketing, but it also leads to sales as well.
Mhm.
Um, there are so many people that are really great at what they do. They're great personal trainers, let's say. And when they're in the gym or behind the computer for, if it's a virtual engagement, they're very confident in talking to their clients, and they know their business, they know what they're talking about, and they're probably not shy, introverted people. But when you get them out of their comfort zone of saying, hey, all right, I want you to do 3 sets of 10 reps of this exercise or whatever, and this is why I want you to do it, and hey, you're looking great, and all of that kind of interaction, and you start asking them to talk about their business, right? Or you start asking them, maybe they've become successful in their business, and now they're getting an opportunity to play a little bit larger role in their community. They're getting into charitable work, they're working with the school system or whatever. Suddenly all this anxiety, self-doubt, right, imposter syndrome, all these other things come up. They realize, hey, I've got an opportunity to grow my business. Now I'm being asked to speak in front of a larger group of people than I've ever spoken to before. It's not a small little training class or something. The stage fright comes on. Even though they were perfectly comfortable speaking in front of a class of like 20 people or something, now they're being asked to speak in front of 100 people, and somehow that's different in their mind, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that that's the biggest thing that I see. It's one of the things that really holds small business owners back from growing their businesses and being as successful in their business, in really connecting with their ideal clients, is that kind of lack of confidence in their ability to communicate, to connect effectively with their intended audience.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. I see that. I see people that when you have a business, the business needs a face. And
Yeah.
usually when people are looking for a face of a business, if they want to connect with it, if they want to know, like, trust you before they become clients or think about becoming clients, they need to have a face to put with that brand. And along with that face, they also need a story, because one of my mentors, Thomas Plumbers, always says, tell them your story, because if you don't, they're going to make up their own.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
where do you begin to help, fit pros overcome that hurdle?
Yeah, well, where it begins is having a really clear idea of who your client actually is, which um, might seem a little counterintuitive. You might think, well, I have a story, so like, don't I start with my story? And the reality is that we have lots of stories, right? We all have
Mhm.
stories. I can tell you stories about the hijinks that I got up to in college, and the time my friends decided to get me, you know, blind drunk because I'd never been that drunk before. And they, and we were freshmen in college, and that was just not right in their mind, right? Like, I can
Mhm.
tell you that story. That's not really probably going to help me get the clients that I'm looking for, right? So I'm not going to tell that story. I mean, it's still my story, but I'm not going to
Mhm.
tell that in this particular instance, right?
Okay.
Um, So you have to know who your audience is. You have to know who your target audience is. And for a lot of business owners, that's a huge hurdle right there, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're a fit pro or you're a restaurateur, or maybe not so much restaurateur. They tend to be pretty clear. Oh, I have an Italian restaurant or something. Okay, great. So people that want Italian food. Now you probably want to narrow it down a little bit more, but you don't see a lot of restaurateurs saying, I have a food restaurant. Well, what kind of food do you serve? Well, I serve food. I'm a great cook. I can cook any food. Come on in. I'll make you food. Right. But there's plenty of fit pros that are like, well, who do you serve? It's like, well, I train people that like want to get fit. Really? Yeah. You train people that want to get fit. Like what kind of people that want to get fit? What does fit mean to them? Are they 50-year-old that was on the, high school and maybe college basketball team, but now they've been behind a desk for 20 plus years and they're 35 pounds overweight and they want to get back into shape? I mean, that's very different than the early 30s mom who's trying to lose the baby weight versus the woman that's trying to do a bikini competition, or the guy that wants to do bodybuilding. I mean, there's all different types of people. I tell the running coaches that I work with, I say, look, you're a running coach. Runners are not your target market. Stop marketing to runners. First-time marathoners are your target market, like weekend warriors that are looking to increase their mileage without like re-injuring themselves. That's your target market, but runners are not your target market. That's way too broad. Nobody's going to be hugely successful as a running coach marketing to runners because it's just not
not a niche.
Exactly.
It's a category. Yeah.
Right. So you get clear on that. And then I think your story becomes a lot clearer, right? Because once you realize who it is that you're looking to attract, now you know the stories that you have that are going to attract those particular people, right? And you want to get comfortable with the fact, and this is the next, I think, big hurdle, is that your story is going to attract your ideal audience, but it's also going to repel a bunch of people as well, right? You're going to start, if you're somebody who is, a strength and conditioning coach, well, that's not going to appeal to probably to the mom looking to lose the baby weight, right? Or even the 50-something-year-old guy that's looking to take the weight off or whatever, right? Because that's not what they're looking to do. And that's okay, right? Like if you want to be successful as a like sports performance strength and conditioning coach, then you're not looking to work with the mom that's looking to drop the weight or the 50-year-old guy that's looking to drop the weight. That's not you're not a weight loss fitness coach. You're a strength and conditioning coach. So tell stories about strength and conditioning, like whatever that is, right? Your history in that, the things that inspired you to get into it, whatever that case may be. And guess what? Those other people are going to hear that story and be like, oh, I want nothing to do with this woman, right? But that's great, because now you don't have to waste your time like getting on a discovery call with this person and realizing that they're not your client at all, right? Or maybe out of like fear that you won't, a lot of people operate on that scarcity mindset of like, well, if somebody wants to pay me money, I
pay me money. Right.
So then and like you really want to be you want to be doing strength and conditioning work, but like half your clientele are like trying to lose weight. Well, great, you've got testimonials from people you helped lose weight, but that doesn't help you to land the ideal clients that you really want, right? So are you really doing yourself a service? So figure out who that clientele is. And then once you have that clientele, the stories become clear, and get comfortable with the fact that don't tell like a bland story that's going to appeal to everyone. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is to attract your ideal audience and make it really clear who your ideal audience is, and then push everybody else the hell out of the way to make space for your ideal audience to come in.
Yeah, so you can own that niche. That's a great point, because I couldn't agree with you more. I think I see a lot of trainers, when they open up their business, they basically open up a food restaurant in personal training. Yeah, we
right.
serve food. Well, what kind of food? Food you eat, and so it's people are like, I don't know about that, and it's I use the analogy of sports specific training, because everybody wants to work with professional athletes, especially when they come out of college. But you can't do every sport, because the hockey players want to go to the hockey place, the baseball players want to go to the baseball place, football, same thing. You're not going to go to sports. Well, what sport do you? Well, we do them all. Well, if you do them all, then chances are you do them all pretty poorly.
Okay.
Right, exactly. Okay, versus drilling down into that niche of, we go deep into the weeds on hockey, or whatever
right.
the sport is. And so then you get that population, even though you're pushing away the other sports.
I mean, if you want to train for your first marathon, you don't go to somebody that, works with runners and cyclists and swimmers. And I mean, even if you're a triathlete, right, you'll have a triathlon coach, but then if you're getting serious, then that triathlon coach will then sub you out to a swimming coach and to a running coach and to a cycling coach. If you get to that point of being serious, they might specialize in one of those three and then sub you out to the other two or something like that. But like, I know top level triathletes, they have coaches for each one of those
activities.
Race, right? Because when you're operating at a high level, you want to be specific. And look, if you want to make money at anything, you want to be known for operating at a high level. Now, you may not have been a NCAA Division I phenom who was likely to go pro, but for some reason didn't, or something like that. And you have all of this history of like, I really was operating at the highest level. But, that doesn't have to have been your story in order for you to be at that knowledge level where you can coach people in that regard, right? I mean, there are plenty of great baseball coaches. Maybe they're the hitting coach, maybe they're the whatever, they're a great hitting coach, but they couldn't field, so they never made it to the majors, but they're the best hitting coach out there or something, right? And I think in personal training, in any of these, sport and fitness related areas, it's the same. You can set yourself up as top in your field in a certain area. You don't have to claim to be the top, the very best, but you want to be focused and say, hey, I'm really good at this. That's what allows you to charge the big dollars. I mean, I have a client who's an ultra endurance coach. And, primarily now he's working with, successful business, corporate middle management, whatever, or, or up, that, have been athletic. They, ran in high school and college or whatever. They've run, they do 10Ks and stuff like that. Maybe they've done a marathon, but for whatever reason on their bucket list is the fact that they want to do some type of ultra marathon. And, prior to working with, sorry?
These are crazy people.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Prior to working with me, he was charging $85 an hour off of like various, find personal trainer, find, athletic coach, like websites. And he wanted to make more money than that. I mean, it's just that trading time there's only so much he can make, right? He's not going to be booked 40 hours a week at 85 an hour and making 170 grand a year or something, right? So it's like he wanted to start making some significantly more money, and he didn't feel like he could raise his rates because he was in that mindset of like, well, look, I'm, that coach over there is only charging $100 an hour, and he was national champion track star or whatever, right? And so I got him past that mindset and into into a, not selling by the hour, but selling a transformational package. Hey, this is I can't remember right now whether he settled on 16 weeks or 20 weeks, but it was like, hey, this is my 20-week run your first ultra marathon package, and it costs, X, right? And that X, when we worked the numbers, it was like almost twice what he was getting hourly. And nobody was going to pay him that, like, I don't think it was quite up to 170, but it was like nobody was going to pay him that $150 an hour if he tried to charge hourly. But they have no problem paying it to him when he says to them, boom, it's whatever it was. It's like $3,000 to get you from, you will be ready to cross the finish line of your first ultra marathon at the end of this program. This is my guarantee to you. People are willing to pay $3,000 to achieve that dream, right? Easily. I think he can raise his prices, but we're baby stepping. But that idea of setting yourself up in a premium space, it's so big.
Yeah, I like that. And there's a couple of things that I want to approach with that is that once you decide who your demographic is, then that decides the way that your story goes, right? So if your demographic is, let's just say, helping brides get ready for their wedding, right?
Yeah.
Then part of your story and part of your marketing will not be you posting pictures of your workout or your abs, you with your shirt off and abs, correct?
Yeah, totally.
Because it's not going to appeal to your demographic, right?
Right.
So, and then
we talked about this earlier, didn't we? Or if not,
I talk about it all the time. I talk about it all the time because it's still one of the biggest things that I see younger trainers doing when they're trying to attract clients. Look at me. I'm in great shape. I can help you get in as good a shape as I am. But they're assuming that those people want to be in that kind of shape. And most people are intimidated or don't want to pay pay the price to get into that kind of shape. And also people, I think, underestimate how powerful a story can be.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to marketing and branding, because you take Orange Theory, right? They didn't invent rowing. They didn't invent suspension training. They didn't invent treadmills, but they are heart rate monitors, but they put it together in a story, right? Say, this is our story. When you come here, this is what you get. This is what we do. This is our wheelhouse, and people bought into that story, correct? So that can be part of your story and your branding too. And that's really powerful.
Yeah. And your story too needs to be more than just your story needs to be more than just that kind of foundational, like, this is who we are and what we believe in, which is what you were talking about. It needs to be more than just this is who I am as a personal trainer, and this is my road to where, to where I am now. It should be a real rounded look at who you are. I mean, I don't mean in one story, like you get up and you tell a story and it touches on all these pieces, but you should have different stories that are telling different things, and you should be willing to tell those stories. I'll give you a good example. I was talking with a fitness trainer on Clubhouse, and we were kind of touching on this idea and talking about vulnerability and talking about, like, not having all those ripped ab pictures and, look at me and and I said, because look, your clients are struggling right now, like, right? Your potential client, hopefully your clients aren't struggling all that much, but like your potential clients are struggling. Otherwise, they wouldn't be looking to come to a personal trainer. If everything was golden, they'd be just off living their perfect lives. But there's something that they're struggling with, and they're looking for help to get through that struggle. Now, to your point, like those look at my amazing physique photos can be really intimidating to somebody that's struggling. And the issue that they're struggling with is some kind of body image issue or health type thing. Like, oh, look, I got kids and I'm chasing them around and I'm gassed just from trying to play with my grandkids, or, whatever the case may be. You can be like a Greek god or goddess, but you've got to be able to tell the story about how you can relate to the people that aren't there, right? So
Or you
in
can
this
champion
conversation I
them.
was having with this woman, she was like, oh yeah, well, I had a workout, it was my own personal workout. I was in my home gym. I can't remember what she was going to do. Let's say she was trying to do, it was one of like big three. She was trying to do deadlifts or something like that. And she just wasn't, she hadn't, for whatever reason, she hadn't recovered properly from her last workout, and she just wasn't doing it right. Like the workout was not going well. And she eventually just quit, and she slumped down and like butt on the floor, leaning back against her bench, and literally started crying.
Mhm.
And she had the presence of mind, which I think was incredible. She had the presence of mind to at some point pick up her phone and snap some photos of herself like slumped over against her bench, totally at a low point, right? And then posted them onto her feed, being like, yeah, I get it. It happens to me too. Essentially, I don't remember exactly what she said, but that was the gist of that was the gist of the story that she was telling me. There's a story, right? It's like, yeah, it's not all, roses and just, you know, PR after PR after PR for me. Like I have these days too. I get it. You're having those days. I can help you. Right. So that's, have those pictures of your ripped abs, sure, but like make sure that you also have some of these other types of stories that you're telling as well, to show that you're a human being and that you can relate to the struggles of the people that you're going to be working with.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then, so when you say like the story, it needs to be more than just that foundational piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get into that. So what are the layers? I mean, how do you build that from start
Yeah,
to finish? Do you understand what I'm asking?
sure. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, you know, you want to, I go back quite often to the idea that there's typically, I mean, we're talking about this in the sense of a business, right? So ultimately, I mean, our ultimate, you know, not to make this crass, I'm only about the money, because I don't
Mhm.
think that most of us are getting into some kind of coaching role, even though I'm not coaching people in their like to build their physical bodies, right? Most of us that are trainers and coaches, you know, we want to live good lives. We're not doing this for free, but we're not primarily in this just for the money, right? We also want to
Mhm.
help people and see the transformations. We get a lot out of that, right? So, but let's talk about the money for a minute. Like the end goal is to sell people into your program, right? So all this storytelling, hopefully it helps people along the way. Hopefully maybe some of your potential clients take information from your story, the little videos that you put up about workout routines, maybe they go off and they use those and it helps them and they never pay you $1. And okay, great, good for them, right? Like that's good. You've helped people for free, but you're also going to get paid by some people. And so how do you move people into getting paid? Well, there's probably like three key things that you need like mindset shifts that you need to make in your potential audience to get them to the point where they're like maybe vaguely interested in you, to where they're like ready to like whip out their credit card before you even make an offer to them. And they're like, look, how do we, tell me how we can do this. Here's my credit
Mhm.
card, right?
Mhm.
And those things are going to be similar business to business to business, but every business is unique, right? You have your own personal story, you have your target market, which is different than the next person's target market, and so on. So I can't necessarily tell you what those three things are, but you need to figure out what your three kind of questions you need to answer, slash like mindset shifts that you need to make. And then you need to start to build a story or a collection of stories that start to, answer those questions. One key one, obviously, is going to be your kind of personal journey story, right? And hopefully that's going to make the potential customers comfortable with, who you are, and that they're going to have fun working with you. I mean, ultimately, right, you line a bunch of personal trainers up and they all are equally skilled and they all know how the proper form for a bench press or whatever, right? Like ultimately it's okay, how am I going to pick? If I had no other information to go on and one of them was wearing a Star Wars t-shirt or something, I might pick the Star Wars guy because I like Star Wars, right? So like you want to tell your story and kind of differentiate who you are, let people be comfortable with you and think, okay, I might like working with that person. You want to be telling those stories that are relating to, like I talked about the woman, crying against her bench. You want to tell those stories that make your potential client comfortable with the idea that you're going to be able to relate to them and relate to their struggle, right? And then you want to be telling stories that are aspirational. The third piece is usually kind of an aspirational thing. Like, okay, when I'm, for instance, when I'm speaking from the stage, I'll relate it to this. When I'm speaking from the stage towards the end, or, stage or on camera or whatever, towards the end, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to potential clients about, okay, now imagine you started working with me 3 weeks from now. Imagine where you're going to be 3 weeks from now after we've had our initial sessions and we've got this dialed in and that dialed in. Now, imagine, 3 months from now and we've worked on these things and you're really, things are really starting to gel. And now imagine like a year from now where you're going to be versus you don't work with me and a year from now, you're still going to be essentially right here where you are, right? So you talk about some of the aspirational things to make them realize that like, hey, they're, one of my coaches talks about the island of suck. It's like your potential clients are stuck on the island of suck, and your job is that you tell them like, I know how to get you onto this island of, I forget what she calls it, the island of wow or something like that. I remember the island of suck. So it's like, you have to let
We've all been there. We've all been stuck there.
Yeah, you have to imagine that island of the island of wow. You have to tell them about that so that they can then that they can understand that like, oh yeah, this island I am on is the island of suck, but there is a place that is better, and this person can get me there, right? So once you figure it out, so getting back to that layering idea, once you figured out what are the things that you really need to convey to the client or to the potential client, then I suggest people do a brain dump. They, and go talk to friends and loved ones and stuff once you've done your brain dump too. And if you're feeling like, oh, but I don't have stories, or I'm not sure what stories to tell or whatever. I mean, just do a brain dump and like, what stories do you tell at parties when you get together? What stories do you tell to people that you're getting to know? And what are these stories? Because a lot of times they can be repurposed into something that tells what you want to tell. I mean, and this can be very nerve-wracking for people, right? It gets into their vulnerability, and they can feel like they're not the best storytellers. But everybody has it in them, regardless of how you happen to be feeling at any time, to be a good storyteller. I mentioned earlier, I suffer from anxiety and depression. So COVID has been rough for me because it's like the isolation has only exacerbated that, right? So it gets so bad that I really look forward to going to the grocery store just to get some human interaction, right? And not that long ago, I went into the grocery store, probably around 9 o'clock at night. They were just about to close up. I live in a relatively small city, and is this nice little mini chain that's family owned, and it's the type of place where like the employees stay for a long time. You get to know them, everybody knows each other type of deal. So I go into this grocery store, I'm zooming around, I grab everything. There's nobody waiting in line or anything like that, right? Because they're about to close. I go up to the counter, I start chatting with the woman who's ringing me up, and the bagger and the other register operator and bagger, because there's nobody in that line, and the five of us are having a conversation. And the woman ringing me up says, you're one of our favorite customers because you're always in such a fantastic mood when you come in here. You're so fun to talk to, you make us laugh, and then when you leave, we're all a little bit happier because of you coming in for a visit. And so obviously I walk out of that grocery store feeling absolutely fantastic about myself.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, I suffer from anxiety and depression, and the reality is I don't walk into that grocery store in the best of moods. But for reasons I won't go into, I choose to turn it on whenever I go into the grocery store, and I act as if I'm in that like best of moods. And I try to have my interactions with these people be as good as I can make that. Now, I relate this story to you because it's a story that I use a lot with my clients to show them that, like, if they're having I talk about preparing to be authentic. And when you go on stage, when you go live, on your social media feeds or whatever, that like, being authentic doesn't mean coming to the camera however you're feeling right in that moment. Your clientele, your audience doesn't want you at 50%. They want you at 100% all of the time. Now, you can be honest about the fact that you're not having the best day or something like that, but that doesn't mean you act as if you're not having the best day. You always have to act like, right? An actor doesn't go out on stage and give a half-assed performance because they're not feeling it, right? They come out and they become the character that they need to be. And that's what you need to do when you get in front of the camera. Now, why did I tell that?
Or in front of your clients, yeah.
Correct. Now, why did I tell that story? Sorry that I went on this long digression, but the point of that story is I tell that story to my clients to make that point, but it is a double reason why I tell that story, because then I say, hey, did you see what I just did? I just told you a story about going to the grocery store. There's nothing more boring than going to the grocery store. That's not an exciting story whatsoever, but it was a story that made the point that I needed it to make. And most people, when they hear the story, they're like, oh, that's a great story or whatever, right? And it's like, yeah, but it was a story about going to the grocery store. I didn't go on an adventure. I didn't win a race. I didn't do anything, right? I went to the grocery store. And so everybody has got a ton of stories in their life. I've got a story about going to the grocery store. You've got a story about going to the grocery store or something else. So grab a pad and a pen and do a brain dump of all the potential stories that you can tell, because you've got a lot of them. Don't let some mindset little demon convince you that you're a boring person, or that you don't have stories to tell, or that none of your clients really care about, only your close friends and family care about your stories or something like that. That couldn't be farther from the truth, right? You've got a lot to bring to the world, both through your training, but also through your personal experiences and the lessons that you've learned, and the mental and mindset things that you can convey to your audience. And so don't play small. Don't let the self-doubt hold you back. Get those stories out on the page. And just like taking photographs, right? You take 1 million photographs to get like 2 or 3 good photos. You mean you're going to put a bunch of stories down on the page, and then you're going to cross most of them out, and you're going to be like, oh, that one doesn't work, that one doesn't work, that one doesn't work. That's fine. But you'll come up with a few nuggets, a few real gems that are going to play the role, the story, that they're going to fit into the overall story that you're building. And then you just polish those stories up. You hone them down, polish them up, make them nice and tight, so that you can get them across to the audience in a way that makes them really, light up and moves them in the direction that you want them to move in.
Yeah, you want them to resonate with your story. You want them to identify with your story. And you said something in there that I thought was unique. And when you were talking about being authentic, and we all know it's important to be authentic, especially when you're telling your story. But you made the point of, yes, it's important to be authentic, but if you're like having a bad day and you're training your clients, you don't, sit down on the bench and, have a good cry with them. Right.
Right.
Right. You can still have, be having a bad day, but still be on for your clients and still stay with that authenticity of your
Yeah.
story. Correct.
Yeah. I think of it a lot like, um, again, like a lot like an actor, stepping out on stage or stepping in front of the camera. The actor has never been a cabbie or a serial killer or an ER doctor or something, right? But they pretend to be those things. And this is, and they can give a very authentic performance, because then they look down into themselves and they pull up their own personal stories about, you know, whatever that character is going through, frustration or triumph or whatever, right? So there's that method actor kind of system where you like pull from your own life to create this new persona. For us, we're not pulling from our own life to create a new persona. We're just pulling from our own life to embody ourselves at our best, because we've all been there. We've all had that day where it's like, right, you walk down the sidewalk and like the birds are singing and the sun is just the perfect temperature and every glass is like half full, right, or more than half full, and it's like you just know you're on. You're like, I'm killing it today. I'm going to go into the gym. I'm going to have, I'm going to train everybody like hell. Then I'm going to get my work out in, and it's going to be all PRs for me and like woohoo. I'm ruling the world. We've all had those days. And so since we've all had those days, we can remember what it felt like. We can remember how we interacted with people. We can remember that we were like big smiles for everybody, jokes all around, whatever the situation, however, whatever your personality is like when you're having one of those days, remember what that was, and then just pretend to be that person. Right? Because it's not fake. That's you. That's a version of you. You are that way sometimes. Hopefully you're that way, 20% of the time or 10% of the time or something like that. Or where, we're not having our best day 50% of the time, but like hopefully you're having those good days more than like once a year. But remember what those days were like, and then practice being that person, just like an actor practices being a cop or a grandmother or whatever that they're practicing. Practice being yourself at your best. And I would even say, right, hopefully we're getting better year after year after year. Hopefully you're a better personal trainer than you were last year. Hopefully you're a little better business owner than you were last year, better father or mother or friend or child or whatever, whatever your relationships are. Hopefully you're growing as a person. So next year, you're going to be better than you were this year. So I would even say, take you at your very best and push it out a year. And then practice being that person. Practice being you at your best a year from now, and bring that person to the camera, to the stage, to the sales call, to the whatever, and be that person, because that's who your client wants. And again, it's authentic. It's not at all you pretending to be confident when you're not confident, or you pretending to be something that you're not. It's not you making an offer that you feel is not in alignment with your values or something like that. It's you at your best, making an offer that is totally in alignment with who you are, what your beliefs are, and being super confident in that offer, the way that you are when you're at your best, and then take that into every day, every time. You know what I mean? And at first it'll be hard, or it's not hard, but I mean, at first it's not going to be easy, but you know, like anything, you practice at it, you know, you get better and you get better and you get better. I mean, you know, slowly but surely, just like the way you know, the weight on the bar increases slowly but surely over time. When you come back regularly to the gym and you put the work in, and slowly but surely it will be easier to slip into that character of you at your best. And
Gotcha.
then, and the, you know, the added benefit of it is we all know about the mind body connection, right? Like, right, if you stand in like a victory pose, right, you watch runners cross the finish line, there's no runner that doesn't throw their hands up in victory when they cross the finish line. I mean, provided they're winning, right? This is universal. It's not dependent on culture. We all do this. So, you know, studies have shown if you put your hands up in the air and stand like this for like 2 minutes, it actually produces, your brain starts flooding your body with the same type of, you know, cocktail of drugs that you get when you actually are feeling confident, right? This is a confident pose. You can start tricking your body to, you can start tricking your mind to be more confident by standing in a confident pose, or the Wonder Woman, you know, hands on the hips, you know, feet apart. You can smile and you'll actually get, you know, fractionally, but if you smile into the mirror for like 2 minutes, you don't even have to have a mirror, you'll get fractionally happier.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is that the more you practice being yourself at your best, the better you get at it. That pretending to feel great actually has like a feedback loop where it makes your brain start to actually feel great. So the better you get at pretending to be at your best, it actually starts to literally make you at your best, where you're
Yeah.
having to pretend a little less, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I'm reading that book, The Greatest Salesman in the World. And right now I'm on scroll number 6. And that's exactly what it talks about. Being a master of your emotions and kind of behaving your way into a better mood, you know,
yeah,
basically change. It talks about changing your weather, you know, because everything, plants and animals depend on the weather for their survival. Well, so do people in business. But, you know, if
right,
you're a business owner, you bring your weather with you. So if you've got
yeah,
rain and doom and gloom, that's what you're bringing to your clients and to your business. So you need to, you know, change that up in whatever way you can, so you can bring, you know, sunshine and puppy dogs and rainbows and happiness to your business and to your clients. I like that quite a bit. So I feel like we covered that. So let's talk into, because you had an interesting take on overcoming imposter syndrome.
mm-hmm.
Can you walk the listeners through that?
Sure. I mean, I'd started at that. Imposter syndrome is a huge, you know, it's something that unless you're some kind of literal psychopath, who has some outsized level of you know, or I should say sociopath, not psychopath, where you have some like unreasonable level of confidence. All entrepreneurs are going to suffer from imposter syndrome, and if you're not aware of this, and you know, you've got any other entrepreneur friends, you know, screw your courage up and be vulnerable and go talk to them about your feelings of imposter syndrome, and they're all going to be like, oh my god, yeah, same thing, right? Same. So we all suffer from it, and the reality is that entrepreneurs suffer from it more than any other. Studies have shown that entrepreneurs suffer from it more than any other group of people. And kind of subject matter expert entrepreneurs, which I think, you know, most personal trainers and fitness coaches and, you know, sports coaches and stuff, we're subject matter, you know, you're subject matter experts. You're expert in your sport, or in your, you know, in how the human body responds to exercise and stuff like that, right? And there's a problem in that when you become really expert in a field, the more you know, the more you begin to understand that there's still so much more to learn. And it starts to make us feel like a fraud because we're like, oh, I'm out there telling people that I know all about this, but oh my God, there's so much more for me to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're just starting out and you don't know much at all, you feel pretty confident. You're like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot, right? And then the more
Mm-hmm.
you know, the more you're like, oh my God, there's so little that I understand
Yeah.
about this,
Well,
right?
I feel like that curve is like you learn a little and then you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. You know, you know enough to get dangerous, and then you learn a
Yeah.
little bit more and you're like, oh my God, I don't know anything. There's so much more to
Right.
learn. And then you learn a little bit more. And then after you get this deep into it, then you can start to pare it down and almost simplify it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you have to go through those stages. So I agree with you.
Totally.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and so you've got that double whammy of like you're a subject matter expert and you probably, you've learned enough now that you're really in that, oh my God, there's so much more for me to learn.
Hmm.
I'm feeling a little bit like a fraud. And you're an entrepreneur, and as a class, entrepreneurs suffer from more of that kind of imposter syndrome anxiety, right? So you're getting that
Hmm.
double whammy. And um like we were talking about earlier, I I was told something that once you hear it, it becomes, like, oh yeah, well that's not rocket science. That's actually pretty obvious now that you've said it. But we as entrepreneurs we're creative people. You might think like, oh, a painter is creative or a musician is creative, but we're creative in the fact that we are creating something from nothing, right? There,
Hmm.
before us there was no business. Now there's some business, and
Hmm.
that business may be, like, none of us invented none of us here invented the type of business that we're in. If you're a strength and conditioning coach, there's been a zillion strength and conditioning coaches before you, but none of them have your exact business. None of them, necessarily are living in the area that you're living, serving the demographic that you're serving, specializing quite the way that you're specializing it, right? So this business that you're creating is brand new. Nobody's ever created a business exactly like it. And that means, quite literally, there's no blueprint that you can be following. I mean, there's obviously entrepreneurial and business general blueprints, but none of those blueprints are paint by numbers that are going to give you your exact business. You're always going to have to kind of figure it out on the fly, make some stuff up, right? And that big imposter syndrome fear is like, oh my God, at some point, I'm going to be pitching myself to somebody or whatever, and they're just going to laugh in my face and say, you are so full of shit. You're just making it up as you go along, aren't you?
Hmm.
And we all live in terror of that moment. But when you think about it, that's exactly what being an entrepreneur is. You are literally making it up as you go along. There's no
Hmm.
other way that you can create a unique business. If it's unique, if nobody else has ever done it exactly the way that you're doing it, then that means you have to make things up, try things, experiment, be willing to fail, reiterate, do better the next time, so on and so forth. So when you start feeling that like imposter syndrome, like, oh my God, I'm a fraud. People are going to realize that I'm, I don't have all the answers. I'm just throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. That is literally what you are supposed to be doing as an entrepreneur. That is that is the job description. And so don't waste a lot of time, worrying that people are going to figure out that you're an entrepreneur, essentially, right?
Hmm.
Like people, no other business owner would ever like tear you down for being honest about how you've been experimenting in your business. They'd all be like, oh, that's great, man, you're experimenting in your business, I need to do that
Hmm.
more. Like,
Right.
they would lift you up for that. And yet we go around worried that like our clientele are going to somehow find out what it's really like to be an entrepreneur and then like not trust us or something like that. But, people are smarter than that.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a, like, so also, I forget who it might've been Mark Twain or something. It's like, you can never lose money but betting against how dumb the general public is or something like that. And, or, you know, it's like, yes, there's a lot of ignorance and, misinformation out there in the world, but in general, people are, kind-hearted and understanding and caring, and people get what it's, even if they've never been an entrepreneur, in general, people get what it's like to be an entrepreneur, in the fact that you've got to try new things and see if they work and stuff. So, when you're having those real self-doubts, those moment of self-doubt, that imposter syndrome, just, you know, I've never heard that there's any way to stop it. It still, it still happens. I mean, my dad's in his 70s and he's always trying new stuff in his business, and and he talks about, self-doubt when he was starting out, self-doubt when he made his first million, self-doubt when he pivoted into a new thing. I mean, it's always there. But if you can realize that, it's irrational, that you don't need to be hiding that you're making it up as you go along. There's no like, nobody's out
Just
there.
embrace it.
Sorry.
Embrace it.
Yeah,
Embrace
embrace
it.
it. Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, own it, be vulnerable. I mean, see, take the armor away. It's that armor that's weighing you down, that
Mhm.
feeling like, I've got to protect myself and I've got to pretend to be like, have all the answers, and
Mhm.
I'm the expert, I'm the personal trainer, and you can come to me and trust me because I've got it all wired tight. And
Mhm.
you don't have it all wired tight. So
And
stop pretending that you do.
and that doesn't ring authentic with anyone when you do
Right.
that.
Take
Yeah.
that weight vest that you've been putting on yourself off, and like, let yourself be free to move around a little more lightly. And yeah, I mean, you're still gonna have those days where it just comes crushing down on you, like, oh my God, I I don't know what I'm doing. But then hopefully you can tell yourself that's okay. Like, there's not an entrepreneur out there that knows what she's doing or he's doing. Like, we all are making it up as we go along.
Yeah. By definition. I mean, if it's never been done before, then you have to make it up.
Right. I mean, you can choose not to, right? But that's
Uh-huh.
playing a really small game. Like, your
Uh-huh.
business is never going to be successful. I mean,
Mhm.
if I can, I mentor people in coaching and in marketing, and when they're working with me and they're essentially doing everything that I'm doing, they're learning, and they're going to be successful in that. Like, they're modeling after someone who's successful. But if they want to be really successful, I mean, they're not gonna then leave me and go be clones of me out in the world and be really successful in their business. That's not how they're ever going to really explode into their own success. They have to then figure out what they're going to do better than the way that I do it, or at least
Mhm.
just different. They've got to come
Yeah.
into their own, and that means making some shit up and trying some stuff and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work, right?
Yeah. One of my good friends and mentors, Frank Nash, he said it best. He said, just embrace your weirdness, man.
Yeah.
Just embrace your weirdness and just let it go. I mean, that's who you are. It should be part of your story. It's what makes you unique and what makes you stand out, and all of those things. But y- yeah, you have to be honest at the same time because that's what really resonates with people. You
And
know, so yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of all those things that we've discussed. I always end each show. It's my favorite part of the show because I think we get some of the best answers because we get to peek behind the curtain that is Seth
right.
Donlin. So my first question is, what has been your most successful failure? And by that, I mean, at the time, it seemed like a devastating loss that you didn't think you were going to be able to recover from, but you were able to take life lessons from it that propelled you to greater success down the road.
Yeah, that's a good question. My biggest failure.
Most successful.
Oh yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
My most successful failure. Um, Yeah, well, oddly enough, I don't know that I really looked at it as a failure at the time. Though it certainly, I mean, financially, it was a it was a huge waste of money financially, right? And didn't I spent in my early 20s, I saved up a bunch of money and I spent almost 3 months in South Africa, and it was intended as a self-funded freelance journalist, as a journalist, a self-funded like freelance trip. I thought I'd go there and have a great time, have adventures, and write about the adventures, and that I'd sell some of these articles to magazines, which just didn't end up happening at all. Um, I had a couple like lad mags that were interested in some of the stuff that I wrote about, but ultimately I didn't earn a nickel, and I just spent thousands and thousands of dollars to go there and live for 3 months. And um, but it really was what launched my career, because I got back from that still kind of fired up and hungry. And in the when I got back, the 2000 presidential elections were really heating up, because I got back in like spring of 2000. And so I just started, I flew out to Philly and flew out to LA, to cover the respective Republican and Democratic national conventions, and just kept kind of grinding at that freelancing. And that's what eventually led me to start, I was not having any success at it. So then I said, all right, screw it. I'm just going to start my own publication. Nobody else wants to publish me. I'll publish myself. And that's what ended up leading me to founding the weekly newspaper that I did, which has really been the genesis of all my success. I mean, it's from there that I, eventually moved on to, I won't say bigger and better things, but other things that I did that, it was the beginning of my career. So.
Yeah. So you were able to pick up some skills from that served you down the road.
Yeah.
Some
I mean,
skills and determination. Yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately, I mean, it was a great experience. I mean, going to South Africa was wonderful. I met some really interesting people. I practiced my trade. I learned some of the thing. I failed a lot and learned from those failures. Right, like I said, I had a number of I had a number of articles that just nobody wanted, number of topics that I thought would sell that didn't sell. I had a number of other ones that people were, that there were some editors that were interested in them, but they just ultimately were, I was just missing a little bit of something. And that was important to know. I mean, like I said, I started my own newspaper, and luckily we grew that to a success. But then once I was doing my own thing, I launched a nationally syndicated weekly column. I freelanced into other newspapers and magazines and stuff like that. So, it wasn't just like I was vanity publishing my own stuff, or nobody else would have published me. And so those failures that I had on that South African freelancing trip was, that was important. That was kind of my master's degree in journalism. I didn't go to for a master's program, and I didn't spend quite that much money, but it was my master's degree in
kind of a real world master's degree.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then my next question is, in your time in the fitness industry, working with the fitness industry, what has been the biggest surprise that you've had to deal with that you did not see coming? And COVID is exempt.
Right. The biggest surprise that I've had to deal with that I didn't see coming. I guess my biggest surprise, and it, again, I guess maybe it should be one of those things that seems kind of obvious, but like it continues to surprise me how many fit pros really don't see themselves as entrepreneurs, or if they do, they really don't have an understanding of what that means. So like I put up a social media post recently. I said, are you a coach or a trainer, or are you a business owner? And that was the title. And then the second, the first sentence after that was like, if you answered coach or trainer, we've got a problem. You've got a problem we got to talk about here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can be the greatest trainer in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to have to work for somebody else if you can't figure out how to prioritize the business part of your business, because it's a
Mm-hmm.
business. So it continually surprises me how many sport and fit pros, they want to be in business for themselves, and they're really good at what they do. And they realize, obviously, that they have to do the accounting, they have to do the scheduling, they have to do the bookkeeping, they've got to do the marketing and stuff like that. They know they need to do those things, but they really don't invest the time and the money and the effort into either getting good at them or like outsourcing them to somebody that can do them for them. And but they spent the time and the money and the effort into learning their trade and getting certified. And it
Yeah.
continues to kind of surprise me that people don't have more of a realization that they need to tackle business just like they tackled
Fitness.
fitness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the whole reason I started this podcast. I mean, because I was one of those guys. I was one of those guys that you just described. And so that's the reason I started the podcast, is to help, trainers who are fit pros who need to climb that learning curve to become a better business owner. Because if you're a bad business owner, you can be the best trainer in the world, and you're going to wind up being an accountant because you can't make a living at,
Yeah.
just being a great trainer. You have to approach it like a business. I agree 100%. Yeah. So I can definitely agree with you there. And then my last question is, where do you go for your personal and professional development?
Where do I go for my personal and professional development? Well, a lot of different places. I mean, I think, I'm so horrible with names. It's like it's one of those things, some people are colorblind or whatever. I'm like name blind or something. They go right out of my head. So I'm forgetting her name, but like I shouldn't, because she's a big name in the field. But there's a woman who, I guess you'd say she's a competitor of mine, though she's much more successful than I am. And we're, I mean, her focus is a little bit different than my focus, but she's a former personal trainer who works with personal trainers in helping them build their business. And, one thing that she said, which, a lot of I think she's the first person that I heard say it, but it's like, if you don't have a coach, if you're a coach who doesn't have a coach, why the hell would I hire you? Right. So like the idea that like coaches have coaches, and coaches should have coaches, right? If I'm saying, hey, I'm a business coach, I'm a marketing coach, I'm a communications coach, I'm going to help teach you and it's like, oh, but I have all the answers. I don't go to anybody else for coaching because I've got them all. It's like, yeah, BS. Get out of here. I'm not going to deal with you. So I have all kinds of, I have all kinds of people that I go to. I mean, like I have coaches that help me, even though I've been doing this for, 20, I've been speaking in front of community groups and giving interviews to, New York Times and Wall Street Journal, reporters back when I was working in politics and whatnot. But I have a coach that I work on with my, selling from the stage, with like my presenting and speaking. I have coaches that I work on with my, that help me with my social media marketing. Of course, I have fitness coaches that I work with. And then I also go in and, I haven't, because there's not the need for me to pay for the certification. But I mean, I do a lot of learning about strength and conditioning, breathing methodologies, physical recovery, train, like, sport and fitness is a passion of mine. So I learn about it for myself, but I also try to learn about it like in a little bit deeper level so that I better understand my clients, right? Like if I'm, I've never run a running coaching business or or a physical fitness for weight loss business or whatever, right? But I want to understand. I'm not going to teach you how to do that. That's not what I know. But at the same time, I want to understand it a little bit more than just the average guy off the street. Because if I'm working with you on your social media marketing plan and trying to figure out who your client is and telling your story and stuff, I also need to understand your business a little bit as well, right? Mm-hmm. So so I go and we'll take non-certification courses, but courses on nutrition or, some kind of fitness, take a kettlebell, training class or something like that. Not so that I can be a kettlebell trainer, but so that I have a better understanding of what it is that fitness trainers are doing and need to know and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree. In almost every person that's come on this podcast, I would say 99.9% of them have a coach or a mentor, so, the moral of the story is nobody gets to the top of the lone. You have to build a team if you're going to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think you need to surround yourself with other, it can be it's a tough thing, right? Because we come up with whoever our friends are, right? And it's not like that you want to, sometimes you grow apart from people or people make bad decisions. Maybe they become toxic in your life. And sometimes you have to make that hard decision and prune somebody out. Right. But otherwise, like you come up with people and you want to spend time with the people that you know and love and that you've, that are your true friends. But if they're not entrepreneurs, it's really hard for you to get the support that you need from maybe your tribe if your tribe isn't filled with some other entrepreneurs. And so then you need to either figure out how to make some entrepreneurial friends, not to like kick your other friends to the curb, but to expand your network, or you need to go find some kind of mastermind or something where maybe you have to pay some money to be in it, but where you can get surrounded by other people who are going to understand the struggles that you're going through and will support you in them, or maybe have this, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So you go there and in that weekly meeting or monthly meeting or whatever it is in your mastermind, you're like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. And somebody in your group is like, yeah, I went through that same thing 6 months ago or 2 years ago or whatever. Here's what I would do. And then you're able to help her with something that you've figured out and that she's struggling with. But it's hard to be an entrepreneur in a vacuum. If you don't have a family member to get advice from, or some, former classmates or a mentor or whatever, it's going to be real tough, real tough row for you to hoe, if you're trying to do it by yourself.
Yeah. And the nice thing too about, finding somebody who is an entrepreneur, a business owner, or a mastermind group is that you can have higher level conversations with them, because there's that basic level of understanding of, okay, these are the, everyday struggles of a business owner or an entrepreneur. And then you can kind of, once you've established that you both share that base, then you can have those higher level and start to, grow. So I agree with that. So Seth, this has been great, man. Where can people get in contact with you, get in touch, ask questions, all that good stuff?
Sure. Well, if somebody is just, absolutely burning to speak with me, they can always get on my schedule at reachseth.com, just the word reach and then my name, SETH.com. Or, one of the easiest ways to get in touch with me is on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I'm, linkedin.com/IN/Seth Donlin. Or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Seth Donlin there as well. Okay. But yeah.
And all those links will be in the show notes. Go to trainergym.net, click on this episode of the podcast, and the links to contact Seth will be right there. Seth, have yourself a good rest of your day, man. Enjoy that California weather.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jim. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. All right. Have a good day.
Have a great time.
All right, bye.